Welcome to The Long Strange Trip. I'm Josh, the host of the show. We're going to dig into 6 areas together, finding real work-life integration instead of that brutal 95-5 split too many business owners live with. We're going to approach retirement as an actual reinvention rather than just stopping work. And we're facing death honestly and avoiding PTSD around it. We're also building resilience when life throws us curveballs. We're sharing wisdom across generations. And finally, we're understanding the patterns that show up in all our transitions. I'm not coming at this as an expert. I'm a fellow traveler, figuring this stuff out in real time, especially now as I navigate my own dual cancer diagnosis at 73. Welcome to The Long Strange Trip. I'm glad you're here. Hey, how are you? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at the Long Strange Trip podcast. And my guest is Ron Pevny, and we're going to start off talking about resilience in the later years of life. And Ron has some programs that help people do that, and I'm sure we'll hear about that as we go into the conversation. So let's bring Ron on. Hey, Ron, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me, Josh.
My pleasure. So tell me, if you were to tell a person one thing, and I know this is a really stupid question, but I'll ask it anyhow. One thing about building resilience later in life, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that the most important quality for living well in later life and for building resilience is developing the flexibility to let go of expectations, to let go of how they think everything should unfold each day or in the larger unfolding of their life, and to allow themselves to really flow with what's happening, because there are going to be many, many changes that happen in the latter chapters of our life that are going to require this flexibility or emotional fluidity. And if we don't have that, and if we're continuing to try to hang on to how things used to be or how we think things should be, we're going to find that that's a really difficult way to live, because things are not going to stay the way they have been or the way we think they should be.
And what kind of things might happen if you don't do that? And what kind of things might happen if you do that? Let's go with both sides of that.
If you do not cultivate the ability to go with the flow, then you're going to find that more and more you are going to be fighting and resisting in futility the changes that are inevitably going to happen. And there are going to be a lot of changes. There always are in life, but especially in our later chapters. And that resistance is only going to cause frustration. It's only going to cause emotional distress, because we're fighting against the river rather than cultivating the ability to flow with it. If we're able to flow with it, the second part of your question, then as these changes happen, we're able to align our energy with it. Our sense of well-being will be supported because we are flowing with the river. We're not fighting everything that is happening, trying to make it be otherwise. We feel much more peace, much more calm inside. And that's, I think, what we all want to feel, especially in the latter chapters of our lives.
So I'm going to guess that many people, maybe not most, at least many people, don't do very well with going with the flow in their younger life.
Mm-hmm.
And they likely won't do it so well in their later life unless they learn how to do it. So how does one learn how to go with the flow?
Oh, I think the importance of most of the personal growth processes and practices that are available to us now, either from the realm of psychology or from the the access we have to all of the world's wisdom traditions. We've got incredible access to that wisdom now. I think they all teach the necessity of practicing and being willing to practice going with the flow. I think they all teach that fighting what wants to happen does not serve us. It only causes misery and disappointment. And so I think it is so important, the younger the better, to develop a commitment to doing some inner work. And a big part of any of the inner work that I think is available to us now is learning how to not be attached to having everything look the way we want it to look. And so I recommend that people, long before they reach their elder chapters, really start doing some of this inner work that enables them to flow rather than resist.
In my experience, I have not met a lot of people in my life that have done any inner work. And when they get to be 60, 65, 70, they still haven't done any inner work. And life seems to be a struggle.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's true?
That they haven't done any inner work?
Yeah, but they haven't, and they kind of resist it as even when they get older.
You know, Josh, I think that's because the world we live in, the culture we live in, the society we live in, doesn't value inner work, doesn't value personal growth. It values achievement in the material world. And that's where we put our energy. And if we're not raised in a way that teaches us the importance of learning how to look within, learning how to get in touch with our own inner voice rather than all these voices that are constantly telling us what we should be doing. If we're in a culture that doesn't do any of that, then it's inevitable that most of us are not going to see that that's even possible, and certainly not going to think that it is important. But I think the good news is that more and more in the world we're living in, Josh, there is a realization from so many different directions that our well-being does depend on doing some kind of inner work. And so I think that that's slowly but surely changing. And I don't pretend that I can sit here or anybody can sit here and give people a prescription for all of a sudden becoming more resilient. But I think that the work that I do and many, many other people do is designed to help people develop this kind of emotional resilience. And so I encourage people to find, do a little investigating, find something out there that seems to resonate with you, that would motivate you to do a little inner exploration, to do a little bit of this inner work.
So, Ron, where do you think curiosity fits into all this?
Curiosity, I think, Josh, is such an incredible quality. And I think if we're, I'll talk for myself. When I am really feeling curious, and I'm a pretty curious person, I'm always wondering about this, what happens if this, what happens if that. I think the more we have developed an appreciation for our natural innate curiosity, the more then we're going to be interested in seeing what happens as changes happen in life. Changes happen, and rather than having some idea in our head that all changes to be resisted and fought against, I know my curiosity is that, boy, I wonder what's going to look like when this changes or when that changes. I wonder what it'll feel like if I decide to kind of flow with this change instead of fighting it. And I know, just give you a personal example right now, I've got some problems with my back that, are causing me a bunch of distress. And there's a part of me that wants to fight it and change it. And yeah, I don't want my back to hurt like it's hurting. And I'm doing my best to find ways to deal with that situation. But I see that my curiosity really wants to take a look. what's it like if this is hurting in this kind of a way right now? What's it like if I just kind of let go of a bunch of my thoughts that, oh, this is such a bummer. What's it like if I just think, wow, this is all part of an incredible journey of getting old. And sure, my back is hurting, but there's a bunch of other fascinating stuff that I really love about aging. And I'm just kind of curious to see how these all fit together. I think that curiosity is a sense of wanting to explore everything that is happening in us and to us, rather than approaching it with firm conclusions of how it should be.
Oh, is it possible to do, excuse me,
Mhm.
to do inner work when you're not curious?
Oh, let's see. That's a good question. I suppose maybe it is, but I think that it goes two ways. I think that if you're really doing inner work, psychological and spiritual growth work, that naturally leads to curiosity. And so I think the work leads to curiosity. And I think having a strong sense of curiosity can lead to being willing to try doing some of this work to see how it's all going to unfold, what difference it makes. And so I think that they feed each other.
Seems to be sort of a chicken and an egg situation
Yeah, I think so.
where, for some, curiosity leads to inner work, and for some, inner work leads to curiosity.
Yeah.
Although I suspect, and I have no idea if this is true or not, because I'm just guessing, is that curiosity, if you're curious, it's easier to go to inner work than the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
It has less, it has less pushback
Mhm.
because the other thing which I think is really interesting, you mentioned resilience a couple of times. And I find that resilience is a fascinating topic. In fact, it's one of the 6 topics at the Long Strange Trip. And the reason I find it so interesting is that just my observation, and again, I may be right, I may be wrong, is that most of the world uses brute force for resilience. They push from the outside.
Mhm.
In my experience, resilience, real resilience, comes from the inside.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's true.
So again, here we are again with the same sort of chicken and the egg question, but not really, is why is it the world thinks that brute force is the way to build resilience?
You know, the modern world we live in does not have a whole lot of psychological and emotional and spiritual sophistication. I think,
Would agree with that.
we know that. And so therefore, so we're not going to understand some of these things that might be a little bit more subtle than just brute force. We're not going to understand how important they are. But the world's wisdom traditions uh, from cultures around the world have understood more about uh, human growth, human well-being, uh, human um, fulfillment. They've understood these kind of things and they've taught them. The world we live in, most of our young people are not taught these very well at all. And so, they grow up living just like their parents lived, like their parents lived. And I can't give you a better answer for why, but I think what's most important isn't the why, but it's what can we be doing once we realize that resilience is important and we don't have those qualities maybe. What can we be doing to start to learn about them and to start to see if we can focus on them?
One place we might want to look, and I'm curious about your opinion on this, is to look past Western religion to Eastern religion. Eastern religion seems to me to be more about, gee, I wonder how the world is. And what I believe may not be true versus Western religions seem to be pretty darn rigid. And if you have a philosophical religious belief of rigidity, it would seem to me it would be very difficult to get into that inner world unless you start questioning some of that Western religion belief.
And I totally agree with you. I think what you're saying is really right, Josh. And maybe that's the reason that so many people these days, you've seen the studies, your listeners have seen the studies, so many people do not identify as being a committed member of a mainstream Western religion. But a great many of these people identify as being spiritual because they understand there is something to spirituality that is not just about rigidity and dogma. It's about the kind of things that the Eastern religions that you are talking about, for instance, that is very much about the underpinnings of their whole worldview. And I think that appeals to a lot of people. And so that's why, and a lot of people who identify as spiritual and not religious, I think if you really were to have a good long conversation with them, I think they would say that, yeah, these elements that you find in a lot of the Eastern religions are the things I resonate with, and not the doctrinaire stance, and not the dogma, and not the rigidity.
So I'm wondering if I am not naturally curious
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not naturally inclined to look at the inner world, I'm wondering what is a good doorway in?
Whoa. I think there are two kinds of doorways in, Josh.
Okay.
One doorway is one that most of us would never choose. And
Which
that's
is?
the doorway of life hitting us in the head, or hitting us in the body, or hitting us wherever it hits us, with some of those kind of events and occurrences that shake us up enough, shake our sense of that we know who we are and we know how the world works and we have control, shakes us up enough that all of a sudden we almost feel forced to begin to look at life in a different way, or at least a somewhat a different way. And so that happens. It happens for all of us, and that is a doorway in. The other way is that I think it might be important, if we're not naturally curious, to kind of make a bit of a discipline for ourselves and tell ourselves, maybe I'm not this curious about this, but I think it might be important for me to strengthen this curiosity a bit and this resilience. So I'm going to go and I'm going to see if I could uh, see what I could learn, about from psychology or from some of the spiritual traditions, and just see what they have to say and see if that piques my interest at all. I'm going to step outside my comfort zone a little bit and explore something different and just see how I relate to that. And I think if somebody does this makes any kind of an effort, they're going to find all of a sudden that you're naturally going to start to wonder about some things that you've been holding pretty rigidly.
Yeah, unfortunately, I kind of think that's a big if. And I've dealt with tons of people who are pretty rigid
Yeah.
and who are not really willing to take a look because it scares them.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes we have to put ourselves into a position where we're willing to be scared a little or maybe even a lot, depending on who you are, before you take a step into that world. And if you're scared, do you have any recommendations or suggestions for people who say, gee, I've been told I should do this? Like, for example, I tell my sister that would be really a good idea for her to learn how to meditate. And she says she can't do it. And I said, well,
Hmm.
I think I'm trying to, you know, be perfect at it. Nobody's perfect at it. But I think at the bottom line, there's a bit of being resistant and scared to what might happen or what I might learn or what will change in my life. And that really scares the heck out of me.
Yeah. You know, well, first I'd say, Josh, that you touched on something that I think is one of the main things that I share in the work that I do, my writing and my retreats and all. And that is that I don't think any real personal growth happens in our comfort zones. Okay.
Would agree with that.
You need to be out of your comfort zone, either by making a choice to step out a little bit or a big bit, or having life, to what I was saying earlier, having life present you with situations, force you out of your comfort zone. Okay, so I think that's just a basic given. If you are somebody who's scared, then taking a big leap out of your comfort zone is not the kind of thing that is for you.
No.
But looking for small ways in your daily life or whatever, small things you can do that might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but to do them just so you can get a little bit of practice stepping out of your comfort zone and then having the experience, as most people do, excuse me, that when you step out of your comfort zone to do something that feels scary, but something about it feels, yeah, like, it's a good thing. I'm just a little scared. When you step out of your comfort zone, most of the time you find that almost immediately you think, God, I'm glad I did that. What was so scary doesn't have to be scary, because stepping out of the comfort zone, the pluses certainly outweigh the minuses. And so it's making small little steps, almost like making, I know some people who kind of have a daily discipline that every day I'm going to do something that takes me just a little bit out of my comfort zone, just to see what it's like and to develop the ability and the confidence to do that. And so starting really small is what I would tell the kind of person that you're asking about here.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, one of my mantras in life is uh, taking great big swings for change rarely works.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mantra is fail fast, fail cheap, which means take small experiments that don't have much of a psychic or an economic cost. And if it works, you might keep going. If it doesn't work, then you say, well, that didn't work.
That's right.
Except most people, for whatever reason, and I've been coaching people for years, and especially in the business world, want to take great big swings. They are sure their big swing, their big idea is what's going to move them to the next thing. And more often than not, they spend years before they're willing to give up on it. Does that fit into the stuff you do?
No, I think I totally agree with what you're saying there, Josh. Um, and I think people learn from experience. If you keep doing things a certain way long enough, and if you are self-aware enough to at least take a look every now and then to see what the results are, at some point you're going to come to the understanding that, yeah, the way I've been approaching this, maybe it just ain't working. So maybe there's another way to approach it. But
Yeah.
I guess
Go ahead.
I would say that the kind of people who listen to your podcast and to a lot of other podcasts and good webinars and things are the kind of people who are already somewhat curious, the kind of people who are already willing to step outside their comfort zones, at least somewhat, the kind of people who already are committed to inner work in one way or another, the kind of people who've already developed some resilience and want more. And so they're looking to you or to me and my work or to others for some guidance as to how to find more. And so, you and I right now are talking to certain people who've already done some inner work. I don't think we're talking to anybody who has done absolutely none. And so,
Yeah, we're talking to the converted.
yeah, yeah, or at least people curious enough to start to think about being converted. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, here's the question I have. Those who are committed to inner work are surrounded by people who are not. What's your recommendation to them to help those who are not become, at least take a first step? Because this is something I hear all the time is that, and it's almost like I'm blaming others for them not being able to do it,
Mhm.
which I think is a wrong way to look. You should never blame anybody because they don't do what you want them to do. But what, you've got lots of programs, or you've got programs anyhow. What would your recommendation be to those people?
Well, Josh, I would say that the way we are wired as human beings
Hmm.
is that we are strongly influenced um, mentally, emotionally by those around us. We're wired to resonate with the people and the messages that fill our lives. And so, therefore, if we want to make some changes in our attitudes and our approaches, we need to find some people that we resonate with, who resonate with us, with the vision we have for what might be possible for our lives. We can't do it alone. I do not think that people can grow emotionally, spiritually, in any way in isolation. We need to find at least a few other people that can be part of our lives and that we could be around on a regular basis, that we resonate with, and the way they are and what they say and what they do supports our vision for what's possible. And the way we are and what we say and what we do helps to support their vision. It's only, at least in small groups, in community, that we could make any kind of significant change.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And Ron, unfortunately, we're out of time. And I'm going to bet there's people who are listening that might want to find out more about what you do or get in contact with you. So how would they go about doing that? I know you've got some programs, so why don't you talk for a second about that?
Yeah, for many years, we've been offering a signature program, if you will, called Choosing Conscious Elderhood. And that's for people who have a pretty strong commitment to their growth, but they really, really want a deep immersion in understanding the possibilities of aging, possibilities for growth, for resilience, um, for service, for purpose. And they want some support in doing that. It's a week-long program called Choosing Conscious Elderhood. You can learn about that on our website, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also offer one-day programs and weekend programs that are for people who are more just beginning to want to explore or become aware of some of the possibilities for growth in their later chapters. Um, we generally call it conscious aging, aging with intention and passion. And I think for many people, the doorway into learning about a lot of what you and I are talking about now and the kind of work I do is my book. It's called Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, Claiming the Gifts of Elderhood, available anywhere that books are available. And we have a website that many people find is really attractive and really inspiring. And so if people go to, this is here's a mouthful, but it's centerforconsciouseldering.com. Centerforconsciouseldering.com. You can learn a lot, plenty of articles. There's poetry
Cool.
or resources left and
Thank
right.
you so much.
Say that again.
Thank you so much. We have to cut it off here. And I've got two things I would like you to do. The first is I would like you to give us an honest rating and review. If you love us, give us 5 stars. If you hate us, give us 1 star. Um, and if you give us 1 star, I might cry a little bit, but I'll get over it. If you give us 5 star, maybe I'll jump up and down, do a happy dance. The second thing is if you found this podcast interesting or have listened to other podcast episodes and say, gee, I might make a great guest, why don't you send me an email? We'll have a short conversation and see if it would be right for you. My email address is jpatrick@stage2solution.com. That's jpatrick@stage2solution.com. And solution is singular, and the 2 is the number 2. So this is Josh Patrick. We're with Ron Pevny. You're at the Long Strange Trip podcast. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon. Thanks for spending this time with me today. I really appreciate you being part of this journey. I'd be grateful if you'd leave an honest rating and review. It helps other people find these conversations, lets me know what's landing with you and what isn't. If you love the show, give us 5 stars. And if you hate it, give it 1 star and I'll just cry a little bit. Keep asking the hard questions. Keep being honest about what's difficult. And remember, we're all just trying to figure this out together. I'll talk to you next time on the Long Strange Trip. Thanks for stopping by.